All right. Hope everybody's having a good day. Appreciate you being on the call. Just a couple quick personnel updates. One nice thing about the Zoom is it's certainly easier to use notes to pass along information. So um, first, as far as AC and Braden, we're just going to continue to monitor them. We'll have updates for you during the week as those updates become available, and we can keep you posted on how those guys are progressing. As far as Khari, Willis, and Michael Pittman, they both are in concussion protocol, so they'll go through that standard procedure. All right, as far as the game goes, recap of the game. Like we said last night, it's a tough loss, especially you're up 24-7. Almost midway through the third quarter. After the game, you're flying home and sitting at night watching that game last night, thinking, "What the heck happened? What was that?" That felt like a nightmare. You're dialing up answers, looking for answers, and what are they? And like most times, right? It's never simple. It's never that simple. There's a lot of dynamics, a lot of moving parts. It's complicated. Not the least of which is we're playing a good team. It's 12-3, future Hall of Fame quarterback and the #1 defense, but. For us, the way to simplify what those answers are, it's this way. You take what's complicated and make it simple by everyone takes responsibility. We each have a role. We all have to take that. No one has it all figured out, starting with me as the head coach and an offensive play caller. No coach or player graded out 100% in this game. We all got to learn. We all have to get better. And we do that while remaining extremely confident. Player, coach, team. We're an extremely confident group. So we're disappointed, very disappointed, but we're not down. It's the NFL. It's crazy stuff happens every week. We got to keep perspective. The reality is we're a 10-5 team. We're a good football team. Got a lot of belief in our players and our coaches, a lot of conviction about what we're doing, who we're doing it with, and how we're doing it. And you heard Mr. Irsay say the other day, and I would just echo these words. I really believe this is a special team, and I believe it's already been proven out, and I believe it'll be continued to be proven out. We got one regular season game left. Our plan is to attack and finish strong. Have a great week of practice. Go in there, do our best to get to 11 wins. Fight hard and get 11 wins, and believe that'll be enough. Just a couple comments as far as the tape, after just watching the tape, just in each phase, very briefly. Special teams played well. 3 explosive returns. We caused 2 penalties. Our punt coverage was very good. Negatives were we had 2 penalties that we need to have 0, and we had 2. Defensively, I had a dominant first half. We were good versus the run the whole game. Forced 6 punts at a tremendous goal line stand. Tremendous goal line stand. Those were, and really had another one that we jumped off sides and gave them another play. So that one hurt us. But the negatives were the penalties. We didn't get a turnover. We didn't get any turnovers. Came close on 2. Some of the big plays we mentioned, and then they had that stretch in the second half where they had 3 touchdown drives in a row, and we got to get one stop there. We just get a stop, one stop, even if it's just a field goal. Offensively. Given both tackles out, had a really good first half. One of our better halves of football, especially considering both tackles out. We ran the ball well. We had good chunk plays. And as I mentioned after the game, in this particular game against this defense with their schemes, we probably did a little bit more at the line of scrimmage than normal. Philip was phenomenal in that regard, and the guys did a great job of executing pass and run checks. I won't give all the details, but just to tell you, we were in double digits as far as how many times we're checking run to pass or pass to run, and the efficiency of those checks as we went back and graded them all out was like 80%. Those plays were like 80% good when we're checking. So that's a credit to Philip getting us in the right play and the guys really executing those checks and getting everything communicated. So those were the positives. The negatives on offense were too many sacks, too many third longs, turnovers. Second half, we had that stretch where we had 3 3-and-outs and a 5-and-out. And that's obviously the same time the defense had their bad stretch. So just not a good team effort right there. And then situational football backed up, 2nd and long, and 2-minute. We were subpar. 2-minute we're usually pretty good at, but both at the end of the half and at the end of the game, we came away with 0 points. Obviously we had the long screen pass called back, so that hurt bad. It backed up. We're normally pretty good backed up. We're always going to get 1 or 2 first downs, and we failed there. And then when we had 2nd and long a couple times, we weren't able to convert there. And then last thing, just, several of you asked me about play calling. As I've always said, when we lose as the offensive play caller, it's not good enough. I typically tell you, win or lose, there's always 1 or 2 you want back. Sometimes I tell you what those are. I'll tell you what the one was this time. I look at that second half and could have we run it more? I think it was a flow of the game thing, but there's one place where I really where I felt like in the situation I should have called a run. And that was, we're losing 28-24. We just had a 10-yard run, so it's 1st and 10. There's 6 minutes and 40 seconds to go. We're close to midfield. We're losing by 4. We're probably in 4-down territory at this point. So you got 4 downs. So keep it in phase. Keep it in phase. Call a run. Maybe even call 2 runs. Right. Use up the time. Have one last final drive and go in and win the game. I called the pass. We end up with an interception. So if I'm really being critical of myself and critiquing myself, that's the one that it would have made sense to call a run to me. So I'll open it up to questions from there.
Frank, is it concerning to you that you've had a couple of injuries in practice the last couple of weeks?
Yeah, great question. We've had 2 significant injuries on Thursdays. But the answer to that is, I don't like it, Joel, but there's just a philosophy that we just have to practice hard on Thursdays. Now, AC's injury was not something that was going full speed. It was more in a kind of a half speed drill. So, Buck's injury was kind of more of a full speed injury. So those come with the game. I just believe that you can't give up practicing hard. It's too important. All the good teams, the best teams I've ever been on, and I've been on a lot of good ones, all practiced hard. And you might limit the number of reps that you go hard to take care of the guys that way, but the ones that you're full speed, you got to go full speed. So that's just our philosophy.
Mike Chappell.
Yeah, Frank, I'm not sure you can elaborate at all, but is Braden Smith positive or close contact? Can you say?
Yeah, Chap, we're not, we've just kind of made our kind of deal that we're not just going to say any of that stuff on any of the players.
Okay.
Sorry.
Thought I'd ask. Thank you.
Mike Wells.
Hey, Frank, you've always, when things don't go right, you've talked about the play calling with your play calling. Yesterday, it seemed to kind of hit home with you with the play calling. And when you're in a situation, how much does it, when you leave and you go over to film, are you second guessing yourself? I mean, did yesterday hit home pretty hard on the way it was called?
Yeah, every loss hits home hard, and it's a very emotional game. You invest a lot into it. It's a big game late in the year with a lot of meaning to it. And so, I hope that and I feel like a lot of our players and coaches, when things don't go right, the first place you're going to point the finger is yourself. And so, and the way it feels at the time, but then when you watch the tape, you got to get perspective and you got to take the positive. You still got to be critical of yourself. You got to be really hypercritical of yourself and look because we had 70 offensive plays and, there were a lot of good calls, but that's okay. If there's one bad call, it's too many, especially at a critical time. So, and I felt like I made a bad call at a critical time. And we didn't make a play. Now, if we hit it for a touchdown, maybe I'm not saying that, but looking at it, if I'm trying to be critical of myself, which I am, that was really the one play. Probably, Mike, the sentiment about should have I called a lot more runs in the second half? I probably don't feel that, to be honest with you. Just charting the drives of the second half because of here's what, in my experience, whenever I've been part of a game where they abandoned the run in the second half, or we abandoned the run in the second half, here's the common denominators: 3 and outs and 2-minute offense. almost every time. If I look back over the games I've been involved in, hey, you didn't call enough runs in the second half. Why is it? 3 and outs and 2-minute offense. You know, we had an 11-play drive at the end of that game. It's a 2-minute. We got no timeouts. We got to go 85 yards. I'm not calling any runs. So, and the other one, when you get 3 and out, it's hard to call run. You know, I called it a run in each of those series, except for one. And so, yeah, I'm critical of myself. I believe I need to get better. It wasn't good enough, but you also gain perspective of the positive as well.
Zach Kiefer.
Frank, with so much swirling around your team right now, with all the playoff scenarios, and you guys have to win on Sunday as well, and there's these injuries that you don't know about, a lot of different ways a coach could handle this. I'm curious, what's your coaching philosophy in this situation, and what will you tell your team this week with so much going on?
Yeah, keep it small. I mean, don't, you know, and obviously our game got flexed, so we'll know the results of 3 out of the 4 games that have an interest to us beforehand. I talked about it Saturday night. Even I talked about it with our team Saturday night. I said, hey, don't get wrapped up in this Dolphins Raiders game. I mean, it is what it is. And then when you're watching the Packers Titans game, don't get wrapped up in it. I mean, we're going to watch it. We care. We know what we want to happen, but don't get wrapped up in it. Don't get yourself too emotionally invested in it. Of course, we're a little bit invested in it. It matters. And this is obviously we need help. So, we need one of these teams to lose. But the way it all is a moot point if we don't win. And the way for us to win is to put our energy into preparing and beating Jacksonville, who to us, I know they don't have a good record, but we got a lot of respect for this team. We have not always played well against this team, and they obviously beat us early. So, you know, we have a lot of respect for them coming in here and believe that we'll get their best effort. So we need to put our energy towards them.
George Bremer.
Coach, you have any favors you can call in with Buffalo to get some on Sunday?
Well, I'll tell you what, I'll definitely be a Bills fan this weekend. That's for sure.
For a real question, you said after the game on Sunday that you didn't give the offense enough answers in the passing game. Are you talking about routes there? Are you talking about getting out of the ball quickly? I'm just wondering more specifics, whatever you can say in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you asked that, Jim, because that was my knee-jerk reaction because we lost, and of course we didn't give enough answers. I didn't give enough answers because if we had, we would have won. But when I went back and I evaluated the pass checks and the run checks, there were a lot of good answers. It's like I said earlier, we needed one more answer. When I say we didn't give enough answers, this is again where you gain perspective. We're a good team. We got good coaches. I got confidence in whatever as a play caller myself, but you know, and it's the same thing as an offense or a defense. You can hold a defense can hold a team to 3 points, but if the other team scores more, it's not good enough. Then you should have got a shutout. Offensively, same thing. You feel like you always got to score one more. So looking back on it, you know, there were plenty of good answers that I believe both coaching staffs, offensively and defensively, had a lot of good answers, but not enough because we didn't win. And so just like I'm sure the players, you look at yourself, and I'm sure the players had a ton of great plays. There was a lot of good things that the players did on the field, but can you make one more play to help us win the game? Yes, coaches and players, that's just the way we're wired. We lose, one play matters, and we're gonna take it like that.
Kevin Bowen.
Frank, there's a pretty stark contrast in your yards per play, first half to second half this season. How conscious are you of that, and do you point to anything at all for that?
Yeah, no, that's fair, Kevin. Look at it all the time. You know, look at you know, we've been really efficient with the first drive of the game, and not efficient with the first drive of the second half. And in general, like you said, first half, second half. So we got to get better there. I got to get better. We have to get better as an offensive staff, as offensive players, to have better production. Sometimes, you know, when you're a winning football team, which we have been this year, you know, sometimes you're calling more runs in the second half, and runs typically average less yards per play than passes. And then another dynamic, as I'm just thinking off the top of my head to answer your question, with a lot of teams is, all the stuff that you game planned, a lot of your best stuff you're calling early. You want to get off to a fast start, but there is an art to how do you rework those things to make them work in the second half, reformat them into different formations and personnel groups. And even though there's probably some other dynamics that I'm not thinking of off the top of my head, I do think that we can do better in that regard. I think that's a valid stat that we need to figure out how to be better at.
Do you script the third quarter first drive, or is that too difficult to do with everything going on?
I do, but I can't. I do. I had not been doing that, and then about halfway through the year, I started doing that just because of I've looked at it from the last 3 years. In fact, I just looked at it again today. For 3 years, we've been always good in the first half, and then in 18 we were good in the first drive. We were fourth, and then 19 we were 17th. I think in 18 fourth last year coming out of the half, and then we're 31st this year. So something's different this year and than the previous 2 years as far as coming out in the second half. But we definitely need to figure out how to be better there.
Jim Aiello.
Yeah, Frank, just to follow up on that, does the scripting happen then before the game, I assume?
Yeah, no, I'm typically doing the scripting Friday.
Okay, and so how does that? I assume you make adjustments based on what you've seen, players, things like that. How does that kind of work for that the third quarter game script? Based on what happens in the first half.
Yeah, no, excellent.
If any adjustment.
Yeah, so I script the first 15, 20 plays of the game. Then I script the first 15 or 20 plays of the second half. Typically, I'm just sharing this information because there's no competitive advantage. Typically, the first 15 of the game, first 15 or 20 pretty much go according to script. I don't really veer off those very much. And then in the second half, I'm scripting them, but then I'm coming in halftime, getting with Nick and the offensive staff and saying, okay, here's what we have scripted for the third quarter. Have they done anything differently that we need to adjust to? Are they playing any other coverages? Are the tendencies still the same? What are we having success with? It's not, you just factor all those things in. Okay. Oh, I ended up having to call this at the end of the first half because I liked it and we needed to play and I thought this was the best play. So what are we going to put in there? So the second half script's got to be a little bit more fluid than the first half.
All right, last one, Stephen Holder.
Frank, hey, I was wondering whether as a player or coach, either one, have you been in a similar situation where you had to kind of, see other games play out to know what your own fate? I mean, obviously you guys got to win, but have you had experience with that? And secondly, what was that like emotionally or however?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And the answer is yes, I've been in that situation multiple times. I don't know how many, but multiple, thankfully. And so you just got to stay focused. You got to minimize the energy that you're using to those other games. You're going to have some, it's inevitable, but you got to, so the way that we approach it and the way the head coaches have approached it, the teams I've been on, hey, just get it out in the air early in the week. Hey guys, we all know this is a situation. We all know it matters. We all know we're going to be looking at the score. So let's talk about how we're going to be pros about it. What's the best way to handle this? Let's keep minimal energy there. Let's stay focused on what we're doing. Don't get obsessed about that. Let's not be, and then Stephen, I've had a conversation with Chris today about when the game got flexed. We talked about this last night on the plane. And then again, today the game got flexed. Do you put the scores, are we going to put the Titans score on the scoreboard? Do you want players looking up there during the game scoreboard watching, as they say? Those are all questions that we'll address this week.